He was social media chief for Prime Minister Modi's landslide election victory, and then he became chief executive of the Prime Minister's flagship citizen engagement project, MyGov India. It's a huge pleasure for us to welcome today Mr. Arvind Gupta. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here, Joshua. And I'm excited to do this interview in a completely digital format. And it's something that I think is the new normal. And as we go forward, we'll see a lot more of interactions change using digital technology. So thank you for having me here. And I'm happy to answer all your questions and share my experiences in these times, which can help us as societies, as nations, and as global citizens.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And I think first what I want to do is reflect on your deep knowledge of social platforms and communication. So if we reflect a little bit back in your career to when you were in the BJP, campaigning on behalf of the Prime Minister Modi to win that first election campaign, you were introducing a lot of new tools and techniques and approaches in using social media in communicating that message. And I think some of our government viewers might be interested to know, how do you bring that knowledge into an agency or organisation, and how do you help people understand the benefits of these tools of communicating?
Joshua, I think what we need to realize is that as nations and citizens become more digital savvy, a direct-to-citizen communication, whether it's for political purposes or for government purposes or for outreach, is becoming the necessity of the day. While there are authentic and verified sources of information coming from credible media houses, I think it's important to establish a direct connect to the citizens in whatever manner it's possible. So let me give you a couple of examples. And then, the BJP you talked about in 2010, when I took upon the task, 10 years actually from today, it's exactly been 10 years today, was to use the latest technology to leapfrog. BJP was an opposition party there. The Prime Minister was the Chief Minister of a province in Gujarat. To use latest technologies to be able to directly communicate its policies, its vision, its plans for a new India post-2014 general elections. And we found the media was not helping at all. The mainstream media was not listening to our story, not giving us the time of the day or the proportionate space on mainstream media to be able to connect with the citizen directly. So we established our own channel, and that establishing the own channel did many things for us. We could, number one, establish a trusted, verified information exchange, if you may call, with the citizenry. And anything coming from there meant it was a verified source of information. Now, learnings in that apply to both political parties as well as governments. And you said, what are the civil servants can to learn from it? If you don't do your own outreach, remember, fake news or misinformation travels faster than verified news. So one needs to have its own verified machinery to be able to do outreach to its citizens, to its stakeholders, so that that anybody knows that if they need to go for verified information, this is the place to go. In the absence of that, everything else becomes verified information, and much of it is fake news these days. So I think the limited point I'm trying to raise is you have to use all platforms available to you to be able to communicate to the citizens, your stakeholders, in the language they understand, in a medium they understand, and be in directly touch with them. It's very important for it to be a multi-pronged process, a listening process, a response process, an engagement process. Social media and digital media is not a one-way street. You have to make it engaging, you have to respond, and you have to listen a lot. You have to understand what the other people are saying, or what their what the opinion is, whether so it's not just you write something and you forget. You have to engage, you have to listen, and you have to respond. So once you start doing that, leaders do understand the importance of this, governments do understand the importance of this, And I know you want to raise something, Joshua, but let me just finish. I'll give you a very simple example. Today, India has established, during the time of COVID crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, a messenger platform, which gives out, which is an interactive AI-based bot, a simple SMS platform, a voice-based platform which informs citizens of safety and hygiene and other alerts, a smartphone-based platform, a Telegram-based platform. The point I'm trying to make is we don't leave out any channel. It's a 360-degree communication method, and that's very important in a vast country like India and any other country which has a diversity of population. It's use all the platforms available to you. Don't ignore any platform. Do a 360-degree approach and do communication in all local languages that people can understand, and in easy language that they can understand.
And we are live now on Facebook Live. So for people who have questions, please put them in the comments section for the Digital India Foundation to be responding to. And please also share this video on your profile so that others can join us in the conversation as well. Arvind, you mentioned that this content needs to be engaging. It needs to be a two-way conversation. How can government create engaging content? What are the secrets to making something engaging?
If you're going to put out a 20-minute video on Instagram, people are not going to consume it so easily. Instagram has its own sweet spots. You need to use small. It's a very youthful audience, very different audience. You need to use small videos, small video formats, tell your story in that. The engaging nature of the content does not mean you have to make it less relevant or you can't. That's where creativity comes into play. I'll give you a very simple example. You talked about MyGov. MyGov published a dashboard in 2018-19 timeframes and still does. But the dashboard had small achievements, about 32 KPIs about the government of India. We made each KPI, instead of publishing a big video with 32 KPIs, we mini-sized it, bit-sized the content into each single KPI. And each KPI was just about 3 or 4 seconds GIF. So people could WhatsApp it, put it on Instagram, Facebook it. It just went wild. And so it's the marriage, it's the convergence of the platform, creative content, bit-sizing it adequately, positioning the right content for the right platforms. I think that's the most important part. Two, in today's day and age, quizzes, polls, gamification, and gratification all need to come together. A press release by the government is always an official version. People will still see it and appreciate it. But if you make it into a nice infographic, make a small, 20-second video, 30-second video out of it, the consumption we have seen is much higher. The new, as I say, three ways of engaging more is vernacular, which is, people's local language, video, and exciting voice. So if you follow the 3V rules of voice, vernacular, and video, we've generally seen content to be a lot more engaging and a lot more interactive.
And what's interesting about that is, of course, many political stories will be focusing on the latest political debate and often in a negative frame of voice. But of course, for the civil servants who are watching here, what you're saying is you were splitting up very real, small, tangible government achievements, these KPIs, and they themselves were going viral. As we battle against the coronavirus, I wonder whether you think that there's a sort of similar lesson there in how governments achieve small victories in the coming days and weeks against this virus, and whether there's ways that we could break down those results into shareable content to keep people engaged and also to keep them inspired.
Yeah, see, I think I'll share a couple of my personal stories around this and what we're seeing in India. The Prime Minister uses, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, uses a medium of radio, by the way, and does a monthly broadcast on radio to the nation. It's called Man Ki Baat. Over the previous 3 weeks, we actually collect questions and ideas for that Man Ki Baat. So it's crowdsourced on the MyGov platform and other platforms where people from all across the country send in their thoughts, their opinions, what the Prime Minister should talk about. Then on the last Sunday of the month, he comes on radio and talks about those issues, selects issues from there and talks about to the nation. This particular last month in March, he talked about the survivors of the COVID crisis. And the positive message in that was that there is, people will survive this, can survive this. You need to just follow the right, procedures, follow the right medical advice. And the positive stories that came out of it were very, very high. So in crisis, you need positive communication. And for that also, I say you need verified channels. You need to establish your presence. The Prime Minister of India chose radio as a medium because it still has the largest reach. And very interestingly, that I mentioned this, it's a broadcast on radio. It goes live on YouTube. It goes live on all TV channels, of course. So it's live on digital. It's live on electronic media. But let me give you a very interesting thing of what I was telling you about 360-degree outreach. Half an hour into his speech, after his Man Ki Baat is over every last Sunday of the month. So he talks local India time, 11 to 11:30 mostly. From noon that particular day, we open telephone lines where people can call in a number. It's a toll-free number, and actually listen to that Man Ki Baat in small. They can listen to it all 30 minutes or in intervals of 3 minutes each. Let me just see how many people actually, when they miss out, call back. And also, of course, it is available in 18 different languages. Now, by the time it's spoken in the Hindi language, in half an hour or so, it's then translated in all 18 to 20 different languages and put out on this telephone number where people can access, just call a number, it's a toll-free number, and access that. You would be surprised. More than 50 million people call each time to listen to that conversation of Man Ki Baat. And that's Man Ki Baat is for many people outside who don't understand what Man Ki Baat means, is from the heart. And it's stories of positivity, and it's just it brings out more positive energy in people. That's what the Prime Minister shares and makes positive examples which other people can emulate. This goes viral throughout the country, and a couple of things in that. Positive messages work. You need to have verified channels, and 3, don't ignore any channel of communication. And we don't. We use from an SMS to a incoming voice call to digital YouTube to applications to it goes, of course, on electronic media, and then of course radio. So you can see the power of 360-degree communication coming into play.
And now let's talk about MyGov, because this in its own right is a really interesting program, essentially starting your own social network for Indian citizens to engage, to take part in challenges, to put forward their ideas directly to ministries. Why was this launched, and tell us a bit about how it worked?
So Joshua, I think the whole concept of MyGov, to be summarized, it's a participative governance platform. It's for citizen engagement. The Prime Minister has always believed that the creative energy of India does not lie in a small conference room with 12 to 15 decision makers. If you crowdsource best ideas from throughout the country and put best policy suggestions from and seek input from the 1.3 billion Indians, you will get great ideas. And to a lot of people who want to give great ideas, they never found a good pathway, a good interface between dealing with their government and giving suggestions and interfacing with the government. So MyGov was created as a platform to bridge the gap. And of course, it was digital because it had to have the scale. And so it makes sure that the government communicates better with its citizens. It also ensures that the government gets a lot of feedback, a lot of policy inputs, a lot of great new ideas, a lot of from its citizens. And thirdly, all of government's new initiatives, outreach, communication happens via MyGov. So it serves multiple purposes, and I think today we are very proud to say it's the biggest citizen engagement platform in the world, and anything from India has to be the biggest. And from designing the logo for India's one of the flagship programs of Swachh Bharat to giving the first blueprint for launching the biggest bank in the world, technically the postal bank, from an outreach perspective, has all come from citizens of India through MyGov. And it is not a grievance redressal system. It is not to file complaints. It's to give positive ideas, share positive stories, testimonials, give ideas to the government. And it's both online, offline. It's a classic example of great citizen engagement. And it started on the 26th of July, 2014. It's going to complete 6 years shortly, and it's been a runaway success in the way the country, the government, and the citizens work together.
And let's talk about the challenges, if we may, because one of the really interesting things about it, as you note, it's citizens are set challenges, and they join in from everything from Swachh Bharat, the Clean India Mission logo, right through to other initiatives as well. But startups and businesses can also be using this platform, using these challenges to pitch their services as well. How does that work? How does it work that rather than setting out a tender, government says, we need your ideas, pitch to us instead?
See, this is innovation in governance. When I was as the head of MyGov, I said, we can use the hackathon platform we have in MyGov to get ideas to the government and make sure we use them. To a startup, sometimes a lot of startups, not sometimes, most times actually, a lot of startups are looking to help fellow citizens, the country, and they're not really looking at monetary benefit only. So what we did is we started this process of hackathons, where startups could participate in hackathons. The best solutions would get a small prize, but more than that, they were applicable to be used in government. And in a way, we were supplementing the procurement process. And once that whole first pilot, and we shortened the pilot cycle to 2 months, was successful, they could pitch for any project, and we would give them a recommendation. They could pitch for projects in other government departments, in state governments, federal governments. India is a huge country. So this, I must tell you, Joshua, has been very, very successful in creating the confidence in startups also that there is a market for you in the government. The government can procure from you, show us the capability. Because, I always say startups need 4 M's: money, mentorship, markets, and the correct mindset. And this provided the right market. And there's no bigger market than the government.
And in some ways now, as I understand it, government itself is looking to act like a startup. You're trialing AI in things like welfare payments and in understanding citizen complaints. What's the latest on that?
Joshua, I'm glad you asked that. India has been a great experiment for public-private partnership in the way startups, it acts as a startup itself. I like the way you frame it. MyGov is one example of a startup inside the government, completely run in a startup manner. But there are many other projects. Let me explain what is called India's digital stack, the India stack, which was developed not as a property of one private company, unlike the platforms of Google, Facebook, or the Alibaba or Tencent from China. They're owned by private citizens, private companies, or private individuals. India started developing its platforms around the identity stack called Aadhaar, and built on top of it a eKYC layer, a completely paperless,
And what would an
contactless
EKYC layer be? What's that?
electronic KYC. We can now do a digital onboarding of a citizen to any service without
Right.
that person coming in contact with any government office ever. I'll explain that to you.
Gotcha.
So there's an identity. Now this identity is a number and a biometric. Your password is who you are, not what you know or what you have. Generally passwords are of three forms, right? What you know, your email address and a password, right? Then second form of a password or authentication is what you have, a credit card and an ATM pin. India implemented an identity system of who you are, which is me. So 10 fingerprints, 2 iris scans. In these days of COVID, I think the iris becomes even contactless. And for biometrics, you need to, for finger, you still need to touch something. For iris, you don't, and it can be done contactless. So this is where it comes into play. And we built that identity stack. Today, 1.25 billion Indians have an identity, which is completely digital identity. And along with that, we said, hey, can we use this for onboarding people for banking services, for government projects, for insurance, for benefits payments, completely digitally. And to do that, we created a paperless layer called eKYC layer. Electronic Know Your Customer, something that is an essential requirement for banking, in financial services, wherever else. Today, you can onboard a person into a banking system in India in less than a minute. What it does is it brings down the cost of customer acquisition drastically. And when the cost of customer acquisition comes down, the poor people can afford to, the banks can have poor people also bank with them. Today, we have 400 million bank accounts in India which have zero balance requirements, something that was never available before. So in less than 2 years, 400 million people got included in the financial system of India. That's been the biggest financial inclusion in the history of mankind in such a short period of time. So all because of the identity and the eKYC stack available to us. We then, in the India stack, added something called the payments layer. And the combination of the three is now used to give what are called direct cash transfers or direct benefits transfer. At a click of a button, 100 million, 200 million families in India within a day or two in batch processes can get money, subsidies, government benefits, welfare directly into their bank account. And a Harvard study that we did proved that if $100 billion was being paid out earlier, $85 billion of that was being lost. Can you believe that? $85 billion of that was being lost in translation. Means either it was going to fake people or duplicates or ghosts or to middlemen, because it was a cash payment. So somebody would sign in for 2 people. Today, the 100 billion of the 100 billion, if we transfer from the central government, goes to the right beneficiary. So every dollar is accounted for, every rupee is accounted for. In any times, I mean, we had agriculture crisis the last year. 120 million farming families was given out a special welfare program. It took 25 days for the program to be rolled out, and the fastest disbursement to these farmers in extreme need was given to them. Similarly, in the times of the COVID health crisis, migrant laborers, the poor, the people just below and above the poverty lines were having tough, the government projected they will have a tough time meeting their daily needs. So it came out with a package, almost a $25 billion relief package for such families. And within a matter of 3 days, money was dispersed to every single family of India. Such a large-scale deployment can only be done with the help of digital technologies. And this is something that is native to India, built in India. Today, India is willing to share its expertise and technologies to governments across the world in payments, in benefits, in citizen engagement, in identity, in providing welfare schemes at the doorstep, whatever you may say. So I just want to emphasize the fact that this has been a platform developed completely in public-private partnership, government acting like a startup. And in only that mode, in less than 6-7 years, we produced a world-class platform at an investment of about $1.6 billion, which has today more than 1.25 billion users. So you can see at such a frugal innovation, only government acting as a startup can do. And today, it's not, this whole platform is not owned by a private company or a particular individual. It's owned by the nation of India. And that's the greatness about it.
So we've talked about citizen engagement, we've talked about innovation, and we've talked about how digital identity has enabled that. Let's finish up by looking ahead. You now run the Digital India Foundation. If you could see one thing further happen to digitize India, what would it be?
I think there are a couple of things that are going to shape the future that we see. The data privacy debate, which is a very right thing to do, will also weigh in public good a lot more. Digitization, so that's step number one. Step two, digitization will go even further. I mean, cash, for example. Today, we have not visited a bank or done cash transactions in the last 15 to 16 days of a lockdown in India, right? In the so many days of lockdown, the consumption, experiences, payments are going to become a lot more digital. India's, the whole digital payments layer that India has natively developed, called the Unified Payments Interface, is seeing numbers through the roof. So I think number one, the privacy. Number two, digitization at the micro level, at the bit sizing of digitization will happen a lot. Three, we are seeing, like rest of the world, education becoming a lot more online and digital. Less and less people will see merit in traveling for non-essential meetings like rest of the world, and you'll see a lot more digital interaction. So I personally feel that this post COVID-19 situation, you'll see a great impetus for digitization, digital consumption. E-commerce is going to get boosted. Travel is going to be more experiential, and digital exchanges of information, consumption, and payments will really go through the roof. The third and the fourth trend that we see is going to be around health. What we are seeing globally is that health tech and med tech will take a lot of importance, and this is an area where, for example, agile policy making will also come into play. You saw a lot of resistance to, for example, telemedicines or online pharmaceutical aggregators. That resistance is completely gone during COVID crisis. So suddenly new opportunities in health tech, online delivery of services, including medicines, pharmacies, will go up a lot. And lastly, from the citizen perspective, citizens have now understood that they need to distinguish between fake news and verified news. And because almost it's now everyday cycle. You have a fake news coming up, and the next day the government puts in a lot of effort to bust that fake news, that this is coming from unverified source. But that is also educating citizens that they need to authenticate and verify before they forward and share information. And I think that will become a slightly better norm, because it's always easy. It's human instinct to believe, a sensational news faster than verified dull information. But I think when it comes to health, and this crisis is teaching us that people will start being more vigilant about news and information that is coming to them.
Mr. Arvind Gupta, thank you very much indeed for your time today. It's a pleasure to have seen you.
Thank you, Joshua, and it's been a great interaction, and best of luck to all your other efforts.
Thank you very much indeed. Take care.